You drank a snake oil salesman's drink only for it to make you actually immortal in the Old West. Now 300 years later you see that same salesman. You've got questions. You've got answers. I'd tracked him to the end of an alley-laden labyrinth, tucked away in the corners of a megalopolis on the outskirts of the shattered coast. A part of me wanted to mark the occasion with a gunshot, to put a bullet between his eyes, but because I actually did find him, I figured the gun would be useless. Instead, I came unarmed. Discovering that he was still alive put him in the same boat as me, or the same lake, at the very least. I'd rather approach the situation with curiosity than hostility. Despite surviving for so long, he clearly aged, looking beyond me in years. It was a shock, to be sure. We looked to be around the same age when he did his grift all those centuries ago. Now, the wizened salesman was bald, sporting a wild beard and coke bottle bifocals. He dressed like one would expect an old man to dress, cream-colored plaid button-up, coveralls, well-worn work boots. His posture was horrendous, his body doubled up over a small piece of machinery as his withered hands worked tools into the gaps, the small spotlight that hovered above him doing an excellent job at obscuring all the larger machines tucked away in the shadows. Possibly, he clarified, voice weak, but don't hold your breath. I sat down in the empty chair across from him, watching him work. With every movement, the small table upon which the even smaller machinery sat would wobble. The man, however, didn't seem bothered. He clearly developed a skill other than a way with words. I pushed a few strands of hair behind my ear. Did you know? I asked, my eyes darting to watch his face. Yes, he admitted, unmoved. The fist in my jacket pocket clenched. So, you sold me something you knew would make me immortal? I continued, leaning forward and lowering my head to meet his eyes. You willingly drank it, he countered, manipulating a tool to turn a small gear. For a second, his body stilled, his hazel eyes staring back. You made the conscious decision to consume something that was sold to you. The responsibility was yours and yours alone. Besides, immortality is. He motioned to his own body, relative. What do you mean? I asked, leaning back in the chair. I heard a snap in the wood and instinctively set my arms out in front of me, expecting to fall, but finding gravity to be lenient. There was a small silence before he spoke again. Immortality doesn't exist, he replied, turning the machinery over. It's a concept relative to time. Time is the only absolute, and even it doesn't last eternally. Light itself has a limit, and nothing existed before the Big Bang. Infinity itself is a snake oil. You're only living longer, not forever. What about you? I disputed, motioning to him. Why are you still alive if you're aging like this? Simple, he rasped, setting the machinery aside and leaning back in his own chair, haloed in the narrow light. I watched him mouth the words, but no sound escaped, and yet, I heard everything. My eyes widened and I looked around the room, an empty pit forming in my stomach and a coldness running through my body. When I returned my gaze to the man, he was gone, the machinery he was carefully working on laid out in fragments across the table. A black, oily liquid seeped from its recesses, trailing off the wooden surface and toward me. As I looked down at my hands, I noticed the oil coating my fingers, my hands gripping the very same tools. I shuddered, my breath ragged, and I dropped the tools to the ground, bringing one of my hands to clutch the side of my head. In equal measure, there was a pressure and a lack of feeling. Whatever was happening to me was starting to get worse.